Shri GOPASTAMI ki jai. So, pranam to all of you. Good morning from North Carolina, and welcome. We are continuing with some spontaneous series of classes that have come these last weeks, without any specific schedule in mind, but some inspirations to share a few ideas regarding today, regarding Sri GOPASTAMI. And the subtitle of today's talk will be Transitions and Rites of Passage in God's Life and our own. Trying somehow to connect between the life of God and our life. Basically, that's our life, to make God's life our own life, to make our life part of His life, to somehow reach that meeting point in which our two schedules, agendas, lives become one. There's no separation between them. So in that connection, today we have a very special celebration, or I will say in plural, we have very special celebrations because we are not only commemorating Sri GOPASTAMI, but also we are celebrating the Tirobhav Mahotsav, or disappearance day of Sri Gadadhar Das Goswami, a very special intimate associate of Mahaprabhu. Also the Tirobhav of Dhananjaya Pandit is celebrated today. Also the Tirobhav Mahotsav of Srinivasa Acharya, one of the famous between this Trinity, if you want to put it, along with Ramananda and Narottam. Also, we are celebrating today Subal Besh Milan, which is a famous Leela in which Subal dresses as Sri Radha, Radha dresses herself as Subal so she can meet Krishna. And also today there is a commemoration of the writing of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's Mukta Chrit, or the Pearl story. So different celebrations, as you can see. And as you may imagine, we don't have time to address all of them in today's lecture. So indeed, what to speak and go into detail, I just can mention them. But so this year I've chosen to focus on Sri GOPASTAMI. In some other years, I've chosen in a day like today to focus on one of the other celebrations like Subal Besh Milan or others. But today, the inspiration came to address Sri GOPASTAMI. And the intention will be also to address Sri GOPASTAMI somehow following the mood of our recent lecture from last week during Govardhan Puja, in which we have tried our best to address the Leela, the concept of Leela and the Govardhan Leela in that case, through what we call an allegorical eye. And through that set of eyes, trying to extract different principles, different teachings, values that will correspond and be applicable to our stage, particular stage, present stage as sadhakas, wherever we may be. So I like, just as a matter of not only reminding each of us, but also adding a little bit to what we spoke last week in relation to these three sets of eyes that we already spoke last class and also many times before as well. So I mentioned this in our Govardhan Puja Katha, three sets of eyes that we may call the literal, corresponding to the novice, neophyte, the allegorical, corresponding to an intermediate type of vision, and the esoteric or contemplative or rasic, if you will, eye, corresponding to the topmost type of seer of truth, if you will. So in connection to these three sets of eyes, I will say personally that as a collective, our Gaudiya community, and which of course this was I say collective, I am not pointing at every single individual in the community, but as a collective in general, Gaudiya community and any other spiritual community for that matter, tends towards the literal eye and or the esoteric eye. Particularly in our tradition, there is so much esoteric content to be shared, but sometimes we jump into the esoteric content with a literal eye, projecting like a novice, a vision of a novice towards the highest esoteric realm without going in between the intermediate allegorical eye. And that can create problems for sure. If you approach the lila, the esoteric realm, with a literalist level of realization, you can have as a result of that different varieties of sahajism, fundamentalism, sentimentalism, and other isms, which are not very becoming, if you will. So the intermediate eye that we are speaking about, this allegorical eye that I'm trying to emphasize, becomes all the more crucial to transition from literalism to actual, what we may call actual esoteric participation. Because the esoteric eye has to do with being in the lila, witnessing that, participating there. It's not just about theoretical entertainment or something like that, intellectual curiosity, details of that sort. So for us to actually participate there, we have to go from the literal reading of reality towards a more allegorical, symbolic, interpretative one, and gradually entering the final stage. So why this allegorical eye that we will be using? Again, this will be the set of eyes we will be putting, the lens we will be putting in today's class. So I'm making a brief introduction to further grasp the importance of those lenses. This allegorical eye, as we saw in our previous class, is taking us, among other things, to appreciate why this eye is so important, because through the allegorical eye, we not only can draw teachings that are corresponding to our stage, which is far enough of a reason for this eye to be so important, but also through that eye, we won't only delight, if you will, in the dynamics of the lila, but we will appreciate, as we spoke in the previous class, the Sharanagati of the members of the lila, and the Sharanagati we are to develop if we want to become a member of the lila, the Shraddha, the faith, the surrender, the Vishramba, the trust, the confidence, and the sacrifice, the willing to sacrifice oneself for the pleasure of the divine, that in this case the Brajavasis will exhibit, and they are willing to exhibit in higher and higher degrees. And all of this is foundational to whatever happens actually in the lila. Whatever happens in the lila is just a movement out of what's there in the foundation, that surrender, that faith, that confidence, that willingness to sacrifice in divine love. So if we miss that layer, if we want to jump over, skip that layer and just go to the lila, that may be just a story, a funny story, entertaining narrative, whatever, but not lila in its per se. So we need to appreciate each of these elements that we will see through the allegorical eye, through the intermediate type of vision. Surrender, Shraddha, again, faith, confidence. If we do not learn to appreciate these ingredients, each one of them, we will, again, appreciate the dynamics of the lila only with a literal eye. So we probably will mistake the lila the divine game, the divine play, the divine life of God in love, in the movement of love, we'll mistake that with something mundane. And when I say we will mistake that with something mundane, I mean, we will experience that in a mundane way. We may not say it's mundane. From our mouth out, we will say, this is transcendental, this is divine, this is glorious. But our personal, subjective experience of the Lila won't be transcendental if we don't have the proper set of eyes. And that's why our acharyas over and over again have cautioned us about this. Don't make the Lila something mundane. And of course, we may hear that many times, but it's not only about saying it and theoretically accepting it, but understanding how should I move on in my life so I don't experience the Lila as mundane, how I should approach the Lila, how do I walk my talk, how do I live should I live my life in such a way that when I meet the Lila narrative, I'm not taking that as something ordinary. So again, to take shelter in this intermediate allegorical set of eyes that we will try to invoke in today's lecture, I will say it's one of the best ways to avoid this tragedy to happen. Also, to take shelter of this allegorical eye helps us to extract, as I mentioned, teachings. I'll repeat it one more, just in case, once again, just in case. This type of eye allows us to extract teachings which are specially applicable, relatable to our particular present stage, which is totally important. And probably many of the teachings that we will be drawing today, like we did this same exercise in Govardhan Lila Katha, those teachings are not necessarily the stage in which the Brajavasis are in. The Brajavasis themselves are way beyond the intermediate eye, although those things that we are sharing are included in their realizations, plus so much more. But they are not there in that intermediate situation, but probably we are there, or even we will like to be there. And I would say that the majority of our present, the present situation of the majority has to do mostly with being in the intermediate stage or wanting to be there, or even not that, but hopefully. Let me be naive for a moment. So in this way, both the Lila and the mood and example of the Brajavasis, through this eye, intermediate eye, becomes much more relatable to us sadhakas by being able to draw teachings and lessons that apply in our particular stage. The Lila, the Braja Lila, which is, as we know, Nara Lila, human-like Lila. Of course, the very fact that the Lila is human-like in itself, it helps to make the Lila relatable because it speaks to us in one sense in human terms. But if that's not enough, I will say that the Lila will become much more relatable to us, something which we can identify with, something we can see ourselves in terms of potential, because we will be able, as I mentioned, through the allegorical eye, to extract different teachings, messages, values, principles, all of which perfectly match and apply to our specific present situation. Not just seeing the Lila and feeling, oh, that's so far, that's so high, I have nothing to do with that. I will like, but there's no point of connection between the two. No, there's a lot. We should be crafty enough, if you will, expert enough in approaching the Lila in such a way that it becomes totally relatable to us. Again, not because the Lila has came down to our position and remains, and it only remains limited to be there, but actually that's one of the, that could be said, that's the generosity of the Lila, because whatever stage every sadhaka is in, it's included in the Lila plus so much more. So the so much more may be still far from us, but all the things that are related and relatable to us are in the Lila, and by properly approaching the Lila, we will be able to relate to those things. and the capacity to relate to the Lila, again, not only in terms of, okay, it's human-like and I'm human, but also so much the Lila is speaking to me about my present situation. And I can feel the Lila in my daily life dynamics even. I can create these connections and parallels. So by doing that, this will be arguably, this will be a beginning of ourselves feeling that we belong to that Lila. I mean, you have to create that sense of belongingness, of being part of. Because if not, you will never be there. You will never enter there. It's not that you don't feel part of that, you don't feel part of that, and suddenly you are there. No, you have to actually merge your sense of identity with that portal more and more. So again, this type of approach to the Lila through the allegorical eye is a beginning, that to feel I belong to the Lila, I belong to that realm, I belong to that lifestyle, I'm part of that. I mean, that to feel that we are beginning to participate in the Lila. Interestingly, in English, as well as in Spanish, for the translator there, we want to participate. The word participate, of course, inside the word participate is the word part. So if I don't feel part of that, I cannot participate. So if I don't feel somehow part of the Lila, I cannot participate in the Lila on some level. But if I feel somehow part of the Lila, I can participate in the Lila on some level. Again, it's not, remember not to conceive the things in black and white terms. It's not that you are not in the Lila and now you are fully in the Lila. There's no in-between point. No, it's not like that. No, there will be an ultimate, fully consummated participation in the Lila, but that participation begins at some point and develops in some way, gradually, exponentially, till you finally officially enter the Lila. Swarup Siddhi, Vastu Siddhi, all these degrees of participation. But it begins at some point, and that point is where we are now. You have to learn in this particular stage, how do I feel myself part of that? And therefore, how I participate by making the Lila relatable to me, so I can identify with that. No? Not forcing myself to, to be disjointed from my present life dynamics, and in this way identify with the Lila, but disidentifying with everything that is happening here. But on the contrary, how do I connect the Lila with whatever is going on now in my daily life? That's a way more realistic, sustainable, user-friendly approach. So we cannot participate, again, participate in the Lila if we don't feel ourselves part of the Lila. So, and again, to make a play of words, another one, if you don't feel part, if you don't feel yourself a part of the Lila, you will feel yourself apart from the Lila. So it's just the same letter, it's just one space in between. So you choose to create that space or not. I'm a part of the Lila, I'm apart from the Lila. So what makes the difference in that, how to bridge that gap, that space, is by learning to relate with that divine reality in the here and now, seeing how the Lila can reach us through our daily dynamics. And again, of course, as I mentioned, the ultimate level of participation has to do with the third eye, not with the intermediate one, has to do with the contemplative eye. Sorry. The esoteric eye, the rasic eye, rasic darshan, if you will, but that will manifest after properly engaging with the second eye, with the intermediate allegorical eye, with the type of participation that this intermediate eye is inviting us to have. Remember, you cannot skip that. So the participation in Lila begins right now. So in other words, just to conclude the introduction, which I think it's an important point to make before we enter the Lila and take the proper classes to look through the Lila, we should learn to behold again, to make the Lila relatable to our present stage. And as I mentioned, one way of doing that is learning to behold how the Lila is unfolding in my own daily life. And that's not an insult to the Lila, but on the contrary, that shows how much do I want to integrate my life with the Lila, how much do I want to make my life one with the Lila. So whatever comes in my life, as we say in the lecture some weeks ago, what shines in the darkness, God comes to you disguised as your life. And God is never separated from his Lila. So if Krishna is coming to our life, Lila is there with him. If not, he's not Krishna. And if he comes to me in the form of my life, of the things that happen on my way, Lila can be detected there, if you will. So we should learn to behold how the Lila unfolds in our daily life. We should learn to connect dots of the things that happen in our daily life by using the actual Braja Lila that all of us, or most of us, have studied in detail or on some level. We are acquainted with the Lila, with the Braja Lila in particular. So now let's see our life and establish bridges between one thing and the other. And this is a way to move from reading about Lila to experiencing Lila, again, to participating in the Lila, and to bridging the gap. There is a big difference between reading about love and experiencing love. And it's all about experiencing. I mean, of course, it may begin by reading about that and getting to know something, but that's even the reading has to become an experience, not just reading itself. So in this way, we have to learn to connect the highest domain of love, Lila, with our daily life. That's a challenge for sure, but that's, I would say, one of the main, if not the main work of a sadhaka and someone in an intermediate stage, wanting to really enter the Lila by making the Lila in one way part of their daily life. Lila is not something waiting for us somewhere else, as we sometimes may tend to think in terms of God is the man upstairs. And sometimes it is said he's far, he's over there, Lila is over there, and tend to think of all of these things in geographical terms and generally very far away. So Lila is not something far away waiting for us somewhere else. Lila is a state of consciousness, if you will. Vrindavan is a state of consciousness. Braja Lila is itself. So, as usual, that Lila, or the participation of the Lila, begins in the here and now, not some other day, not even tomorrow. We'll to speak later. So since our participation in Lila begins in the here and now, we are here now, here. So let's begin. Let's go there. Let's put the proper lens. Let's try to access the Lila on the level we can in our particular situation through the set of allegorical eyes, and hopefully drawing some meaningful lessons that can be applied in our life, and that we can apply, if you will, our life and connect the dots in relation to the Lila. So let's begin by sharing that this was an introduction again, that hopefully it's putting everything into proper context. So that having been established, let's go to the narrative of Sri GOPASTAMI. And of course, during the narrative, I will be sharing with you different thoughts and things that I consider important in connection to what I've just mentioned in the introduction. So for this narrative, I will mainly refer to the Gopal Champu of Srila Jiva Goswami, since that's one of the main works in which Sri GOPASTAMI is described, the day that Krishna becomes officially a cowherd boy. So for this, we have to go to a moment in which Krishna and Balaram, they are in their 5th year. We are in the Bhoma Lila, the Lila on earth, that, as you know, has the attribute of chronological unfolding. So there are different things that are happening in sequence as Krishna is being born, crawling, learning to walk, and learning to write and to speak, and on so many things that happen in sequence while this is not happening in that way in Golok, no? But the Lila on earth presents that, again, added feature that, of course, is part of Nara Lila and helps us, another way of helps us to identify with it. So Krishna and Balaram are in their 5th year, and they are reaching the end of their Kumar age, the infant age. As we know, they have 3 ages, Kumar, Poganda, Kishore. So infancy is about to, to be finished, if you will, to reach its end. So all people in Braj perceived, interestingly, Jiva Goswami says that in that year, 5th year, Krishna remained as in the previous year. And the years previous to that, there was no much noticed difference in the sense of he still remained a Kumar. But suddenly, he mentions Krishna took on, adopted, manifested the beauty of the Poganda age, which is the next section, childhood before teenage years, Kishore. So suddenly, this happened kind of suddenly, of course. We are speaking about Krishna here. So even though we may find many things that are totally relatable to our situation, still we may find some elements that in a healthy way reminds us, you cannot compare 100% with everything that is going on in his life because you are not Krishna, just in case. So suddenly Krishna took on the beauty of Poganda age and left the Kumar age. Srila Jiva Goswami, I will read a brief paragraph. I will read it slow so translation can go on, where he describes a little bit what's the implications of this transition. Remember that our title for today is lots about transitions and rites of passage and how this applies to Krishna's life and our own. So Jiva Goswami will describe some of the new features of this Poganda age, which of course goes hand by hand with the GOPASTAMI, the transition from calf herder to cow herder, from Kumar to Poganda. So Jiva Goswami says, Krishna and Balaram reached the Poganda age and their intelligence increased. Krishna's blackness and Balaram's whiteness defeated their luster in their Kumar period. The beauty increased. Their chests increased in size, and their eyes and other limbs became longer. So everything keeps expanding. Their hair and clothing became more elaborate. They became skillful at learning new types of play. Affection increased. And Jiva Goswami concludes saying, this makes me desire to see them. As we know, Sri Jiva Goswami had great affinity also for the Sakya section, despite him being Manjari himself. So what we see here in this interesting description is how as Krishna and Balaram turn from Kumar to Poganda, grow, transition, more complexity is added to the picture. The clothing is more elaborate, they become more skillful and new types of play. So everything becomes more complex, elaborate, and more charming at the same time, which is interesting. Beauty is increasing, charm is increasing in Krishna and Balaram, but also the charm and the complexity is increasing in those who want to commit themselves in service to them. You follow? If Krishna is becoming more beautiful, as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, our dedication increases to serve that new upgraded beauty. So if the transition of Krishna and Balaram from Kumar to Poganda increases in complexity, the servants will increase their capacity to integrate that new complexity to serve and honor that new degree, higher degree of complexity present in the Lila that begs for harmony and integration. So the more we are willing to do that, of course, the more we will become participants, if you will, in the Lila. Srila Jiva Goswami, who is a participant and need to see an eternal participant himself, he's showing the example here. He first describes the increase of beauty, the increase of complexity, and of course, immediately he says, I want to go there, I want to see, I'm willing to do my part, to be part of that. I want to increase my own service disposition to accommodate that new degree of complexity in this transitional period. And that's how life unfolds and evolves. So all these changes are manifesting again in this transition from Kumar to Poganda, as we have just mentioned. So then Srila Jiva Goswami mentioned that noticing these changes, Yashoda said, oh, she thought, understanding that this is the quality of a person beyond infancy, all these qualities we just mentioned, Yashoda says, I'm happy that my Kanhaiya Lal is growing, getting closer to being a man. But at the same time, this same person who is growing is causing me great suffering. So Yashoda has conflicted emotions. Of course, this is part of the integration of the Leela again. Thing that she needs to learn how to accommodate for the whole Leela to continue, for her not to die. Like we know in the daily basis of the Leela, union and separation is the norm. And that's every time there is separation, there's a new degree of complexity that everyone needs to accommodate, because if they don't learn how to accommodate, how to go through that, how to survive that, everyone dies in Braj and separation of Krishna. But somehow or other, they always manage to survive that new separation and the next separation, but a higher degree of skillfulness is required for that. So Yashoda is saying, on one side, I'm happy that my boy is growing very in a healthy way, but on another side, this is causing me great suffering. So everyone asked Yashoda with great concern, why? Why is that great suffering? And Yashoda said, Krishna now desires to herd cows. So she could feel that, she could read his mind and heart. Krishna's psychology, if you will, is ripe for cow herding at this point of the unfolding of the Leela. So Yashoda, as Krishna's mother, can fully capture that, identify that. So, and of course, cow herding has a lot of implications, I could say, especially for someone like in the Vatsalya camp, as we will see, going deeper into the forest, going for more time with all the dangers that the mother will perceive one after another if her child is in the forest. So all that is causing Yashoda great suffering, transcendental suffering. But as we will see, she needs to accommodate that. Everyone needs to accommodate that transition. So Yashoda then is saying, Krishna now desires to herd the cows, which means Gopastami, basically Gopa. He wants to be a Gopa, someone who protects Pal, the god, the cows. So here we have Krishna, as you could say, transitioning from calf herding to cow herding. And this, of course, again, what's the indication here? Krishna will have to deal with greater complexity. It's easier to herd the calves, but it's not that easy to herd the cows. There are new layers of implications that need to be considered that were before unknown, uncertain, as we spoke recently, were dark in the sense of, I don't know what's that, but we have to enter into the unknown. We have to integrate further complexity. And of course, that Krishna has to deal with greater complexity as a cowherd, the fact that the new complexity is coming into the picture brings the need for a greater degree of harmony. A new complexity comes, a new level, higher level of harmonization is required. And of course, when the harmony is in place, a greater experience of charm, rasa, lila, of love will be experienced. That's how it works. First comes a degree of challenge, a degree of complexity that begs to be harmonized, integrated. Then comes the willingness to engage in that and the harmonization of that, and then comes the fruit of that in the form of high, increased, upgraded chamatkar, astonishment and relishment of what Leela is about. And that's constantly happened over and over again without end. Remember one meaning of Raj that Jiva Goswami himself gives, if I'm not mistaken, here in Gopal Champu, is that place where everything is possible, with all things can be fully accommodated, no matter how new degrees of layers of complexity come, how challenging the scenarios will manifest, unknown, uncertain portals, everything will find its place. Everything, because everyone is so willing to enter there and do the necessary to bring forth, invoke a new level of harmony, and therefore on that basis a new level of love, which moves on the ground of harmony. That's Raj. All things accommodated, all complexity integrated, and all love increased at every moment as a result of that. And this is the nature of the Leela. Bear this in mind. I'm saying all the things. Sorry if this is too torturing for some, but because the goal is to enter there more and more and ultimately fully comprehensively, but we need to understand what's Leela, what's the implications of Leela, the dynamics of Leela, the nature of Leela itself. It's Leela will advance, progress in complexity at every moment. A new layer of complexity will be added every single step, literally. Not once per day. If you follow up the daily schedule of the Leela, it's Purna Amrita Sradanam, Mahaprabhu will say. At every single step, you will be able to relish the fullness of the nectar of immortality. So if at every step you have the potential to relish that, means that every step first, complexity will come, harmony will be required, and then ashwadanam, relishment of that at every moment, constant evolution, constant movement, constant development, constant change. That's the very meaning of the absolute, Brahman. The word Brahman means the absolute. And the dhatu, or the root, bri, from Brahman means to grow, to expand. So that's the very nature of the absolute, I will say. And the absolute is not separate from his Leela. So everything in connection to him is in that, shares that same characteristic. So I'm saying this also why? Because although Krishna is officially transitioning at this point from Kumar to Poganda, from calf herding to cow herding, we could also say that due to his nature, the nature of the absolute, the nature of Leela, he's actually transitioning always, at every moment. It's not that it's once in a day, once here, but at every single breathing, he's transitioning into higher and higher and higher stages of experiencing renewed heights of love, of new layers of complexity to be integrated, harmonized, and relished. So, but that's to make the case, but let's go back to the particular rite of passage or transition that Krishna is going through today in GOPASTAMI. So the fact that Krishna is going through this particular rite of passage not only implies an experience of, again, upgraded complexity for him, as we already described, there's new complexity as a cowherd, as a Poganda participant than before. Yes, there is an experience of upgraded complexity, but not only for him, but also for everyone else in Braj. Because Leela is not only Krishna performing Leela, he needs everyone else for Leela to happen. So if in his life something is increasing in complexity and begs for further integration, the same applies to everyone else in the Leela, to every single participant that will accompany that movement. So this GOPASTAMI, this transition is upgraded complexity for Krishna, but also for everyone else in Braj. For example, for his friends, the Gopas. Why? Because every Gopa will now join Krishna as a cowherd. It's not that only now Krishna is a cowherd and all the other friends stay at home and Krishna being a cowherd by himself with Balaram. No, everyone else in the Sakya department is joining him. So this newer layer of complexity that Krishna is facing as a cowherd in Poganda age, the same degree of complexities appear in the lives of his friends, and they also need to enter there and integrate that. And try, of course, I hope that by saying all this, you are drawing all the corresponding parallels to your particular life as a sadhaka, and all integration of complexity that is coming to us at every single step. Again, not only this happens for Krishna's friends, this also happens for the Madhurya Maya Gopikas, from the gopis who love Krishna in romantic love. Because now Krishna's, and of course they are not going with him to the forest, but they enter into another stage of complexity, because what's the new complexity? Krishna is now as a cowherd again. He's entering deeper into the forest, going with the cows, not with the calves. In those sections of the forest, there is a possibility of pebbles hurting Krishna's soft lotus feet, and so many other new dangers that the gopis will think as they pray or sing in Gopi Gita, Chalai Jadbrayam Charayam Pasham, or at the end, Yate Sujata Charanam Burham Stanesh, and so on, where the gopis are just meditating about how soft Krishna's foot soles are. The very thought of that softness being touched by a pebble in the forest causes them the greatest pain, because they cannot even think about that Krishna having to go through that. But now Krishna is going through that apparently by entering the forest deeper. So again, for them it's a new level of complexity in their lives that they need to integrate. Krishna enters a new layer of complexity, and that, how to say, sends everyone else into their own corresponding level of complexity in relation to him. And what to speak of Yashoda, again, as we mentioned, for Yashoda, this is clearly another new layer of complexity. Because Yashoda is thinking about Krishna's new complexity of now my Lala has to become a cowherder. He has to deal with all these different difficulties. So to think about Krishna's own new layer of complexity, that creates in Yashoda a new form of complexity in herself that she and everyone else in the Vatsalya camp have to accommodate. Because if not, again, their parental feelings will like reduce them to ashes, if you will. So somehow they need to manage how to survive in that and integrate that, harmonize that, and go to the next stage, transition along with Krishna, if you will, in their own ways. Krishna is transitioning in his own way, but everyone else is transitioning to a new chapter along with him. So we are worshiping, again, a God that is always in movement and in expansion. So it shouldn't be a surprise that everything else will be moving in that same way as to accompanying his own constant evolution. There we have a glimpse of Darwinian evolutionary theory. Indirectly, it's pointing us as how everything in the absolute is constantly evolving. And therefore, that same evolutionary principle is kind of reflected in this world, pointing at how at God's own life, how everything else moves in that same direction, and we should be willing to accompany that, to be part of that. So, going back to the Lila narrative, Yashoda mentions then, again, I'm happy because of seeing his growth, Krishna's growth, but I have great suffering because he wants to herd cows now, with all that it implies. So after Yashoda mentions how she knows that Krishna actually wants to herd cows, Nanda Maharaj, Nanda Baba then will address the issue, discuss the issue at his assembly with other elderly Gopas in the group. And the Gopas, analyzing the situation, putting everything in the scale, they tell Nanda, they advise him, Jiva Goswami says, we should not tell you to restrict the voice. That's how the Gopas will speak. We won't tell you to restrict the boys from becoming cowherders. You should give permission. And by that permission, you will destroy all auspiciousness. That's how the assembly of Gopas advised Nandaval. In other words, you should give permission for GOPASTAMI to happen. When the time of transition that clearly had come at this point, that's the idea here, when the time for transition, whatever it may be, when the time of further development comes, we should never cancel that. We should never repress that. We should never dismiss that, what to speak of attacking that. No, but we should encourage, we should nourish that. We should encourage transition. We should nourish evolution, rites of passage that will help us become all that we can be. So in this way, this is the mood of the elderly Gopas, advising Nanda Maharaj that Krishna and his friends should herd cows from now on. They are ready to take that step. Again, with all that it implies for everyone, because everyone, all these elderly Gopas are happy to have Krishna at home mostly all day and have his darshan, but now this new stage implies they won't see him that often, but they understand nonetheless that's necessary for the whole thing to unfold in a healthy way. So whenever healthy, substantial symptom of growth and need for growth and expansion, or whatever we may need to keep growing is required, we should be totally willing to facilitate that, to celebrate that, to promote that, to bless that. So of course, Nanda Maharaj, hearing the wise words of the assembly, he agrees. Again, as painful as it is for him, not only for Yashoda. So again, try to bear in mind all the churning of the hearts and emotions in each one of the participants at this point, but despite that, this is required. So Nanda agrees, and at a proper day is fixed with the astrologers of the village. It's fixed, a proper day, which is the following Astami. Of course, this is happening before the day of Astami that we are celebrating. This is a few days before. The day established, Astami will be an auspicious day for Krishna to become a Gopa, which, putting the two words together, make them GOPASTAMI. The Astami, that Astami, like Janmastami, Radhastami, GOPASTAMI, half moon day, that Astami in which Krishna becomes Gopa, or Gopal, as I say. Pala means to protect, Go means cows. Before he was a Vatsapala, we could say. Vatsa means calf, Vatsalya comes from that. So he was Vatsapala before, a protector of calves. Now he's becoming Gopa, GOPASTAMI. So how was this GOPASTAMI celebrated? We have reached that day now. Let's go to whatever we are celebrating today. So let's see how Jiva Goswami visualizes the celebration in terms of the ingredients of the ceremony, if you will. So he will say, I'll read one section here. Wearing new cowherd dress and protective herbs, receiving blessings from brahmanas, being worshipped with lamps on an auspicious day. Krishna departed with the cows, along with Balaram, after hearing sweet songs and seeing dances to the sounds of continuous music. So this is for an initial description of celebration of GOPASTAMI. Interesting very thing mentioned is Krishna is receiving protective herbs, protection, and receiving blessings from the Brahmins. Because again, he's entering, let's continue drawing the parallels through the allegorical eye, don't lose me here. Protection and blessings are totally required for entering unknown territory. As we spoke this days, liminal space, threshold-like areas, darkness, unknown, unexplored layers of complexity. It's a whole hero's journey, a whole adventure to transition into that. So you need protection, you need blessings. So Krishna is receiving all of them, and each one of us need those same things every time we venture ourselves into this new levels of exploring reality. So then he's departing with Balaram, with the cows, to the sound of sweet songs, dance, celebration. But again, before songs, dance, celebration comes protection and blessing. And of course, before that comes the willingness to enter that liminal space, that uncertain land. Then Jiva Goswami says, the arrangements for going to the forest were as follows. So let's see which were the arrangements. Putting the priests in front with songs, music, unauspicious verses, more blessings. Bringing the cows near and worshipping them by offering food wash and arghya, which is another type of water to drink mixed with some ingredients. Feeding them with sweet chickpeas. Respecting them with obeisances and circumambulation. And then offering the same respects to the priests. Krishna, with his elder brother, remained standing in front of Nanda, who had his hands folded. Nanda offered him a jeweled stick, and Yashoda put tilak on his forehead. So Krishna is now a Gopa, officially. He has the Gopa stick, the Gopa tilak, not a particular type of tilak received in that particular moment. But again, before this, different songs, different auspicious prayers, then Krishna honoring the cows, which are kind of his new companions and partners in the journey that he's taking care of, but he's honoring them. So that's an important point. You have to honor and worship those who you are taking care of, and also who will be your companions in the journey before entering actually the forest, before entering here. Nanda Baba and all are there. So they are not yet in the forest. They are not living there. They are still in the village. So before entering the liminal space, the unknown, you have to properly worship, offer proper respect to all of those who are inspiring you in that direction, facilitating you, pushing you in a healthy way into that unknown territory. Those who will accompany you into that portal, those who will accompany you from some distance, like the Vatsalya Gopas and Gopis, everyone is worthy of respect because of we need so much blessings and help to enter that new stage. So in this way, we have all the things in place, Krishna receiving stick, tilak, different rituals, different symbols, who also help to externally mark the transition to a new chapter of life. So this is also important. Sometimes some of these transitions in life are marked by certain external symbols to make it even more clear. Okay, we are going now to this particular new chapter. That doesn't mean I'm already fully accomplished there, but I'm making that clear for me and for others as well. That's equally important. So here we come to the title of this talk, in which God himself is going through different transitions and rites of passages throughout the unfolding of his Leela, GOPASTAMI. Throughout the unfolding of his Leela on earth, again, remember. So by himself, but Krishna himself going through these different rites of passages and transitions, again, he's reaching us in our own situation and reaching our own situation as much as possible, because by himself going through rites of passages, by himself going through transitions, he's pointing to our own transitions, to our own rites of passage, and how sacred all of these transitions should be, how properly celebrated, how properly honored they should be. So today we are celebrating this particular transition called GOPASTAMI, but this is actually a reminder for us to celebrate the principle of transition, change, evolution, development, progress, every single moment of our life, not once a year. Like every other celebration we have every year, once a year, it's just a brief, intense reminder of all those things we should be honoring with every breath. So Krishna is going through this particular rites of passage from calf herding to cow herding. Sometimes in Sanskrit, rites of passages will be termed as samskar, like a particular ceremony that marks a particular moment, that before that and after that something different happened. So by properly executing this samskar, you have garbhodana samskar, so many samskars. By properly executing a samskar not only is marking a particular transition, but also in one's life, like from childhood, from Kumar to Poganda, or from birth to, I don't know, starting to walk, starting to eat grains, as you know, many of the samskars in the Hindu tradition. But a samskar, if you understand samskar as rite of passage, because as we will see, samskar has other meanings. By properly executing a samskar, the samskar will create the required samskars. In the case of samskar, meaning impressions. So samskar, interestingly, can mean like a ritual, like a rite of passage symbolized by a particular ritual, like we are seeing here. But also samskar means impressions that affect our mind. So a particular samskar ritual will create particular samskars, impressions. Or sometimes if you want to make further play of words, in this case with English, sorry, in Spanish you won't be able to do this one, but you can explain that in Angamanjari. Sometimes if we don't have samskars, rituals to mark some part of our life, we may need to acquire some scars. No? Scars. You have scars in your body sometimes, externally or internally. So some scars will help us to develop properly some scars or impressions internally. That's again a play of words for the English-speaking ones. I have to find one in Spanish to be impartial and balanced to that audience as well. So a samskar, or a rite of passage, again, is generally connected to a specific external moment of transition in life. Now I will enter into a more nuanced description of what a transition and rite of passage, with your permission. Please bear with me. So a samskar, a ceremony as a rite of passage, is generally connected to a specific external moment of transition in life, such as from birth, again, to eating grains, garbhodana samskar, to puberty, to marriage, to death, or from calf herding to cow herding, as we see here. These are some specific moments in the unfolding of one's life, which are marked and which are supported by these ceremonies. So there are ceremonies accompanying these particular transitions. So that's mostly the idea of rite of passage. As we will see, transition necessarily is not limited to a rite of passage. You can go on transition every single day of your life, and there may not be an external ceremony to name that. But today I'm taking a little bit, with or without your permission, I'm taking the license to extend the application and the significance of this word, of this term, rite of passage or samskar, not only connecting it with the new social role that one is expected to adopt. Like Krishna here in GOPASTAMI, he's entering in a new social role, from calf herder to cow herder. So he's expected to adopt that new social role. But in this case, I'm not limiting that to only that, but to whatever psycho-spiritual transition that may be required, not only at one single point in life, but at any given moment. Like all of us, I think, have experienced in our life, through our life. So in connection to these transitions, let me for a moment, till now we have been speaking mostly in terms of GOPASTAMI and Vedic traditions, some samskar Hindu concepts. But I like also to broaden our perspective and enrich our understanding of our own tradition. I would like to mention a few ways how these transitions have been conceived and explained by other authors, non-Gaudiya authors, although they share very interesting insights. For example, let's go to the well-known mythologist Joseph Campbell. have special appreciation for him, because the very first book about Krishna I read in my life was by Joseph Campbell, where he described different Eastern myths, if you will, and one of those chapters was the Damodar Lila. So that captured me and a friend of mine more than 20 years back to go and look more about Krishna, and eventually, well, the rest is history, as you can see in my case and in the case of my friend Chaitanya Krishna Prabhu. So Joseph Campbell, when he describes, for example, his archetypal hero's journey, many of you may be familiar with that. He has this book like Hero of 1,000 Faces and so on. So when he speaks about the hero's journey, and he will describe that journey in terms of departure, initiation, and return, which I think already starts to make sense to you. What's the meaning of this? Like departure, leaving the comfort zone, leaving what you know, initiation, entering into the transition, the unknown, and return. Returning back after having integrated the complexity, after learning the lesson and so on. So that's the way Joseph Campbell speaks about this type of movement: departure, initiation, return, which again, is not only once in a lifetime. There's another author called Arnold van Gennep, who is someone who actually is the one who coined the terms rites of passage that we are using today and that is normally used. And Arnold van Gennep spoke also with three words, but with three different words. He didn't use Campbell's departure, initiation, and return. He spoke in terms of separation, transition, and incorporation, which is basically two ways of saying this, basically saying the same thing. Separation, departure, separation from the certain, what is certain for you, separation from what is familiar, transition, moving from out of the comfort zone and entering into the unknown, which for Campbell will be initiation, and Campbell will say then return, Van Gennep will say incorporation. So you have incorporate, it has become part of your own self. Corpor in Spanish, corpo means cuerpo, means body, and in means inside the body. In English, you have the word embody. So you have embodied the teaching, if you will, or whatever experience you had. So you return being a new person. So these are two interesting models, contemporary ones, relatively. And there's one more model that I would like to share that I especially also like, one presented by someone called Bill Plotkin, who have been studying some of his work recently. He's a contemporary author and psychologist. And he speaks a lot about these topics. And he speaks about transitions in terms of, he doesn't use the word transition, he will use the expression, the descent of the soul, which is interesting in itself. And he will describe this descent of the soul not in 3 stages, but in 5, which somehow include the other ones, but also include something else and some other respect. I will just mention them. I mean, there's no time to describe them in detail now. It will be require a whole different series of lectures. So the first one he mentions is preparation. Interestingly, before the separation that we spoke before, or the departure, before preparation, especially in our particular present culture, this is an extra stage, if you will, that is especially necessary in our disjointed times, that people cannot just leave the familiar immediately or enter into the unknown. They need to be prepare themselves first to do that. If not, that may be too much. But in the older systems, that's not included, probably because they were living way healthier times. In this case, people was more accustomed to that. But he speaks first about preparation. Then he mentions a second stage, which is dissolution. And he compares that with like a unmaking of a social idea of who I think I am, which has to do with this idea of entering into the unknown, into the unfamiliar, what I thought I knew, or how I thought I saw myself Tao is starting to be deconstructed in a sustainable way, of course. What's the social idea of who I am, especially today, where our own whole sense of personality is built upon social media? We need to deconstruct that for sure. The third stage after preparation of dissolution that Bill Plotkin mentions is soul encounter, which is like an inner shift of how we see ourselves. Not only the deconstructing and making, but starting to shift to a new perspective of who we are, encountering ourselves as souls. Then the fourth stage he mentions is metamorphosis, which is a whole new identity, a conceived new sense of selves in the service of others, he will add, interestingly. So it's not just how I see myself in a new way, but it has an implication with our environment. And finally, interestingly, after you go through all the stages, his fifth stage is called enactment. Carl Jung will speak in terms of individuation, like becoming all that you can be and do something with that. Enactment has to do with participation. Again, we go back to the idea of participation. Participation in life to its fullest degree. Even in this world, remember, we are not world deniers. Gaudiya Vaishnavism, although some practitioners unfortunately present it as such, is not a world denying tradition, it's a world affirming tradition, to the point that God himself enacts his Leela here, and we are invited to enter that here and now. So interestingly, Bill Plotkin, the later stage after this whole process, preparation, dissolution, soul encounter, metamorphosis, it concludes in enactment, which, like the word, could be easily connected to the notion of Leela. And Leela is a type of enactment. It's a play, a drama, a dramatic play on a stage, as we say, of surrender, of faith, of conviction. So it's enactment. So if the conclusion of this transition or rites of passage of descent of the soul is enactment, the idea is the conclusion is Leela. And the fact that the Leela is enacted on earth, again, shows the possibility of performing that same enactment here, for us here. The possibility is there. So again, these are different ways of conceiving the process of the concept of rites of passage or transition, or, and I would like to go here now with your permission, without it again, the process of initiation. Again, we already used the word here before. Joseph Campbell used that one. Initiation. We also speak about initiation as Gaudiyas, probably from a very different place, although probably we shouldn't speak that word from a very different place. So let's go. I'd like to conclude mostly speaking on this note, how we conceive the idea of initiation and how this is tied to this notion of transition and rites of passage expressed in GOPASTAMI Leela. So as I like to say, and many times I think I've said that, and I will say that one more time, sorry. Initiation is not something that happens only one time, at one moment, in one place, and now I'm initiated, and before that I was not initiated. It's not one single shot, to speak in COVID terms. It's not even one booster or a second booster after it. But initiation is a continual process that will take years, if not lifetimes, and that will continue unfolding for eternity, technically speaking, without end. So in this sense, the notion of rites of passage and transitions can be connected with the initiation process, because these things, these transitions, these movements are not something that happens only once, but we may begin at one point officially, although there's something that you can connect with before that, but generally you can begin something at one official point, but then those things continue unfolding ad infinitum. So as we mentioned, there's some preliminary preparation, there's the official initiation, but then there is the process in itself, the process of initiation, which has no end. So in that sense, we could say that real initiation has nothing to do with I don't know, with something that happens at one point, or also that has nothing to do with concluding in certain rewards that we may idealize. Because, I mean, let's be honest, many times we idealize almost everything. And not only idealize, over idealize, especially, and that's then especially dangerous in connection to God and his unprecedented, unexpected way of moving. So initiation has nothing to do with receiving some idealized rewards that sometimes we expect in our spiritual adolescent daydreaming, if you want to put it like that. No, we may daydream about, oh, the result of initiation, a result of this will be, I will triumph, I will win, I will become a worshipable, whatever, spiritual hero, I will become a saint. Remember Thomas Merton saying, even if you want to be a saint, that's a form of ego inflation. You don't want even to become I mean, you have to leave saintliness without caring for anyone noticing that. It's not about want to be known as such, even want to become that. Why? So initiation has to do with that, not with idealized, like immature rewards, but initiation and the unfolding of it has to do with serving the sacred in more and more committed forms. Again, constant transformation. Here I am in North Carolina, and here, as you may know, there's, as of course in other parts of this country, there's, I mean, the whole country, in some places more present than others, there is some connection with the Native Americans. I mean, again, the connection is everywhere, but some places they are more aware than others. So in the regard, there's an interesting example in this connection with the Native Americans. They have this that they call the vision quest. The vision quest. So in a vision quest, the Native Americans frame the situation, this is what we are talking about here in these terms, a vision quest. And for them, that was supposed to be, that was not just some nice words. They were going into some retreat, entering to the unknown for some period of time, and they were not supposed to come back until they had seen another world, if you will, until they have awakened a certain vision, until they have seen an alternative reality. As Srila Maharaj will say, change your angle of vision. Until you see a larger reality, until you see, somehow you see God. He has revealed to you in a particular way. I'm not speaking literally about the specific darshan here in Krishna's flute, but having a specific type of insight. Until all those things have not happened, technically you are not initiated yet. Because that's what initiation is about. And again, this does not happen only once. This is a continuing process. Diksha Kali Bhakta Kari Atma Samarpana. Chaitanya Charitamrita beautifully describes that. From the natives, Dakotas will go to Krishna-bhakti Kaviraj Goswami. He said, in the moment of initiation, when you have made of your own self, of your own Atma, full offering to Bhagavan, then Diksha is in place. So the question is, okay, but I have not made of myself a full offering to Bhagavan yet. So how much I am actually initiated? And also, even if you are made of yourself a full offering to Bhagavan, you will realize at that point, there is no limit of how much more I can become an offering to Bhagavan, because everything is evolving and moving. So there's no end to the Diksha, if you will. Diksha will take different forms. Eventually, Diksha is connected to Krishna's flute call. I won't go into that direction. That may be too much. I think maybe next week we'll speak about for the last day of Kartik, which also there's a commemoration of the Rasa Leela, which is, of course, it all begins with Krishna's flute call, which is tied to this idea of Diksha. Because Diksha takes the form of Krishna's flute call, and every time Krishna plays the flute for the gopis, and for not only for the gopis, that's a new invitation to a new level of commitment. Krishna has a new level of desire, of necessity, and everyone accommodates, increasing their willingness to serve. So there's no end to that. There's no end to Krishna's flute playing, and there's no end to the devotees replying to that flute playing with that ever unfolding willingness to serve. So again, that's initiation. Do not take these ideas cheaply. Do not make such a deep, profound, unending, mystical experience as something that happens in one single moment, and you have the label, you have the shot, now I'm initiated. So anyhow, let's return for a moment to some of the last words that Jiva Goswami mentions regarding GOPASTAMI. Don't lose sight of where we are, and bear with me a few moments. So Jiva Goswami then says in the Gopal Champu, knowing that the elders wanted to follow, remember, Krishna and Balaram are doing all these rituals and ceremonies in the village with the cows, the elders, but have not yet left to the forest. So knowing that the elders wanted to follow, Krishna and Balaram discouraged them from doing so, freeing themselves from the iron chain of the elders' glances. They laughed loudly and sported with their frolicking friends, who were effulgent with their new occupation as cowherds. So now the boys are duly initiated, showing a new effulgence. By going through the process properly, you acquire a new hue, a new aura, a new level of insight. So they are ready, and they are entering the forest. They are ready for the next chapter. After the samskar, the ceremony, now they're entering the unknown and willing to further integrate this new degree of higher complexity. And the elders somehow want to accompany them, but Krishna and Balaram want the friends free from themselves, like implying it's not the moment for you to accompany us in the way you were accompanying us as before. You have to accompany us from another place. So we'll go into the forest for many hours. You'll stay in the village for many hours, exact same hours, and you will accompany us in a different way now, in a more substantial way, in separation. We are entering in a new unknown area, and you are entering a new unknown area as well, from separation from each other, exploring a new way of living life in separation. We in the forest, you at home. So all this is described in these final words of Jiva Goswami, describing how Krishna and his friends, after being duly initiated as Gopas, finally enter the forest with their friends and the cows. So here we see Krishna and his friends totally happy, again, effulgent, happy, inspired, enthused in their new situation. So they are showing excitement about embracing the unknown, entering the uncertain, dealing with a paradoxical new layer of integration. They are celebrating that, interestingly here, without a tinge of fear, but full of courage, full of excitement. So that's the example. Krishna is leading the way for us as his followers, if you will, because we are followers of Krishna, like it or not. He's the first guru in our parampara. So he's our guru. And Guru Tattva begins with him. So he's Gurudev. Sri Guru begins with Sri Krishna. So he's teaching us disciples how to enter these new layers, how to deal with transition in a celebratory mood, participating fully, without fear, full of excitement. As we spoke again in the lecture, What Shines in the Darkness, about liminal space, entering these in-between places that are new, and are transitional chapters, if you will. And the importance of not being overtly attached to our previous chapter. We see that Krishna and Balaram are not showing any attachment to their previous chapter, to their Kumar age, to their calf herding, to being with their family during the day, not because they stopped loving them, because they are denying that part of their lives, but just they are ready for the next call, if you will. So they have that dynamics, that dynamic spirit. Remember, Thakur Bhaktivinoda will say, today's perfection is tomorrow's imperfection. That's the dynamic of life. You reach something today, tomorrow is something new waiting for you, a new transition, a new height, a new peak to be discovered. So if you want to put it in other words, in our own life, in our own relationship with Krishna, the last experience of God is frequently the greatest obstacle to the next experience of God. That's an interesting way of saying it. The last experience of God you have had till yesterday may probably be the greatest obstacles to the next experience of God. Not because of the experience itself, but because of your attachment to that. And now a new face of God has to be shown, a new unknown face of God through which you may feel he's not present, he's disappeared from my life. Where is Krishna? It's not that he's disappeared, he's taking a new shape in front of you, and you have to recognize that. So don't get too accustomed to think what God is. No? Don't get too accustomed to, okay, I know what God is. To think you know what God is, and to think you know how he feels like. No? Krishna himself doesn't know that. What to speak of you? Krishna himself doesn't know the fullest degree of his own depths. He's perpetually exploring that, especially in his form of Sriman Mahaprabhu. So be careful, ourselves, I include myself first in the list, don't get too accustomed to think you know what God is, how he feels like from your experience from yesterday. Today is a new day. So this is the dynamics of transformation. Transformation, many times, as you know, is more about unlearning than learning. Sometimes we conceive that, yeah, learning, I have to new things to adding. But sometimes we, in the context of also adding, we may need to subtract and unlearn some things. That's why, yeah, sometimes our religious tradition will call this conversion or repentance, which is sometimes it has to do with unlearn. Upgrading sometimes is unlearning some things. How you dealt with the previous stage and how you have to deal with the present stage. You have to unlearn, in one sense, how you dealt with the previous, not be too attached with what happened in the previous chapter, because that's no longer probably applicable to the present chapter. In that sense, you have to unlearn that. And you have not to project the way you dealt with that chapter into your new chapter. So these are very subtle attachments we may have as practitioners, but we have to deal with them. Of course, again, I'm saying all this, hopefully you understand that I'm not, hopefully you don't feel I'm throwing you into a pit of snakes or something this totally impossible to deal with and unsustainable. It has to be done in a sustainable way. And Krishna is patient. He's generous and patient. We don't have to move from out of our comfort zone every day extremely. It's not like that, although we may have periods and periods. But Krishna is very merciful, patient. He will give us some plateaus to take a rest, some breathing spaces in between challenges. But sometimes, unfortunately, again, disconnected to our attachment to the nostalgia with the previous stages, God is giving us plateaus or breathing spaces, but sometimes we get ensconced there again. We get stuck there. That can be another way of speaking about bhakti anarthas. Things that come as a result of bhakti, as a result of our past practice of bhakti and the fruits that came from our past experience. And instead of moving forward, we romanticize too much about them and get stuck there. So let me first, before concluding, almost reaching the end, give me a few minutes, a few words of conclusion, trying to wrap up and make full circle with all the things we have shared today. So Krishna, in GOPASTAMI, Krishna is no longer here a Kumar. He's no longer an infant. That's also an interesting symbolic point. Krishna is transitioning from infancy to childhood. So he has entered now Poganda age, where further complexity can be dealt, should be dealt, and can be dealt with in Leela. And similarly, again, don't forget the parallels as much as we can establish them. Similarly, we should be willing to leave, as Krishna is doing, leaving his infancy, we should be willing to leave the stage of devotional Kumar, if you will. We are also Kumar. We have our own kindergarten in Bhakti, Kumar, Poganda, Kishore, and so many sub-stages in between. Of course, we should be willing to learn to leave the Kumar stage when the moment has come. Probably some of us need to be there yet, and that's health in itself. But when the moment comes, we should be ready to transition and learn to hold paradox, perplexity in new harmonious ways, so we can get closer to actual spiritual maturity, adulthood, eventually through the process of initiation, as we spoke, which is a process, and all that such a process entails. And since I spoke about initiation, I would like a few words that come to mind, especially for us coming from a Western background, a word of caution about that. Because in Western culture, generally, we should be especially careful with the word initiation. Because many people, probably including us, associate initiation with elitism. I've been initiated. I'm an initiated one. With secret societies even, or even nefarious cults, or even in another direction with hierarchical organizations, those who are initiated in the hierarchy, in the pyramid. Or for some people, the word initiation evokes a sense of their own inadequacy, if they have not been initiated yet, if they have not undergone an initiatory experience. Or for others, the word initiation may create some suspicion of arrogance or ego inflation on the part of those who have participated in the initiatory rites, or those who claim themselves to be initiated. So I'm saying this because, again, you see how the word has a lot of charge, content. So because of that, it may be cautious or best to avoid public declarations of being initiated. And that's part also of the Gaudiya tradition. This is not something that you can speak out loud. I'm initiated. At least you are in the process of that, but not something to make very loud, very cheap. Again, initiation is not just like a membership card or something that you have to show to others. It's not something to be worn like a badge or like a status symbol. It's something to be quietly embodied, again, through a life of soulful service. That's initiation. Initiation has to become soul initiation. How much our souls have been initiated, actually, not the bodies, not the minds. How much we have been initiated in the deepest core of ourselves. That's what Krishna is showing here. Krishna is always in the deeper core of himself. So whenever he goes through a transition or initiation, it happens on that level. So this initiation, this maturation, again, not only refers to we integrate external situations that come to us, situations that may come in our life, so many things happen, and okay, I have to integrate, but also for integration, for initiation to actually happen fully, we should also successfully integrate all the different dimensions of our being. Not only what comes outside from us to us, but of course, how we are reading those things internally. So according to the stage we are in, we have to integrate the different dimensions of our being. We have to properly honor our physical needs, not oversleep or sleep, undersleep, eat more or less, yuktahara, vihara, Krishna says in the Gita. Do everything in a balanced way. Honor everything properly. Honor properly your physical needs according to where you are. Don't imitate, don't compare to others. Don't try to do what Raghunath Das Goswami is doing if you are not there. So properly honor your physical needs, properly honor your psychic dimensions, your emotional, unresolved stuff, your pressing subconscious issues that are begging for proper acknowledgement. And of course, properly honor yourself as a spiritual being, being loved by Bhagavan, in consideration of all that you can be. Honor yourself humbly in consideration to your ultimate potential that comes through the gift of bhakti. So all these layers of identity, from the more gross physical to the most brilliant spiritual potential, need proper honoring, integration as part of our bhakti project. And that's initiation process. Our goal is not perfection. Carl Jung once said that. I like that. In this connection, it fits. Carl Jung said, our goal is wholeness, not perfection. Srila Maharaj will say perfection is a demand of the ego, not of the heart, the soul. So we need wholeness, to be whole human beings, integrated, integrity. No, once Bhakti Rasa made that point. The word integrity is totally connected to integration. So the more you're willing to integrate, the more you have integrity. So wholeness has to do with that, not necessarily perfection. If you are someone who is living with integrity, trying to properly acknowledge and integrate every layer of your being, that doesn't mean that you are perfect. That doesn't mean that you are untroubled or unchallenged. That messiness will keep knocking at your door. It's not that you are beyond experiences or times of confusion, mistakes, or tragedies. No, those things will happen. We are not after perfection in that sense. I mean, so a person who lives with integrity by no means have healed all their wounds, probably, and it's okay. But they are on a path of wholeness, basically, to become fully human. Again, that's the challenge for sadhaka, becoming fully human with all the inevitable defects, distresses, which are inherent in any human history, and trying to divinize humanity. Only then we can speak in terms of Nara Lila. Remember, we are here narrating GOPASTAMI, which is Nara Lila, but what should we do with our own humanity to divinize it and participate in the Nara Lila? So we have an identity, we have an ego. The word ego is not necessarily a bad word. Ego is not a problem. Egocentrism is a problem. Will you take your identity and put it in the center of everything? But if not, no problem. You have to honor and nourish your identity properly. The problem is egocentrism. The problem is an immature sense of identity. So anyhow, these transitions that we have been talking about today, these rites of passage that we have invoked for the title of this lecture in GOPASTAMI are this initiation process with all that it entails. All of this is completely crucial for us to experience the necessary transformation, metamorphosis that we need to embrace to reach our next level in our further journey. It's a journey of constant transformation. And this is so crucial. Again, these stages are so important that God himself, Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, he himself goes through all of them repeatedly to show us the way, as he did in this GOPASTAMI Lila that we have shared today. So anyhow, some words about Sri GOPASTAMI to conclude my lecture today. Also, maybe you already know, but I will mention hopefully as humbly as I can, but today is also my birthday. So I was born on a GOPASTAMI, interestingly, 42 years ago now. So it's lunar birthday, in lunar considerations. I choose to celebrate it in that way. So don't look for my birthday in Facebook because every year will change. But you know it's on GOPASTAMI. I mean, don't need to remember that, just remember GOPASTAMI. But I'm saying that why? Because since it's my birthday, personally, I'm trying to identify with all the things that GOPASTAMI imply. I'm not just here to tell you what to do, but mostly this lecture is first and foremost to me. So in a day like today, that somehow I was gifted with a human form of body and came to this world once again. Yeah, I'm trying to identify with at least the things that we've shared today in relation to GOPASTAMI, because there are so many things that we can connect this Lila with. And especially I'm trying to pray and meditate and request your blessings to properly integrate all that I have talked about today, and hopefully I can walk on, especially in the present chapter of my life. And as you may know, it's quite a very interesting liminal space that all this, and that's why all these lectures are probably coming in this language, because basically it's the way I can relate to Shastra according to my experience. And I think that's a very important way, not limiting Shastra to my experience, but relating to revelation in a way that is, again, relevant and relatable to what I'm going through. And in this way, trying to validate my own experience in the context of revelation and putting the two together. So again, today is a very special day, not precisely because of my birthday, but because of the different celebrations we have honored today. GOPASTAMI, again, the Tirobhav of Gadadhar Das Goswami, Tirobhav of Dhananjaya Pandit, of Srinivasacharya, the writing of Raghunath Das Goswami's Mukta Charit, and also Subal Besh Milan, the Leela where Sri Subal is dressed as Sri Radha and Sri Radha is dressed as Subal. So much auspiciousness was required on these days to counteract the inauspiciousness of my birthday. So I feel blessed by that, and I feel deeply committed and grateful to whatever is coming to my life in this stage. I want to identify with that. I want to embrace that. I want to honor that. I want to commit myself in service to whatever all this has to do with me now and in the future. And I'm deeply committed and grateful to each one of you for your support and affection, and your joining me somehow or other in this particular chapter, which is, of course, not only my chapter, but is how Krishna chooses to approach us now. And of course, I look forward to continue this exciting, ever unfolding journey in the service of all of you. So, Sri GOPASTAMI ki jai. And as I mentioned just before concluding, probably next, I will share some flyer and confirm, but I think next Monday, November 7th, is the very last day of Kartik, and there are different celebrations of that day, like today, not that many as today. And one of them will be Rasa Leela. The Rasa Leela in itself will be commemorated. That's why I'm thinking it may be interesting to also approach this most important Leela through this allegorical eye that we have been employing during these last lectures. So, of course, you are invited to participate. Probably will be next Monday, the same time, the same Zoom link and so on, but you will be noticed of that. So I'll conclude here. Thank you so much for your presence. But also let me finish with one extra surprise darshan, since we are on Zoom and we can interact a little bit more in that connection. And today's, again, apart from GOPASTAMI, we are celebrating Subal Besh Milan, in which Sri Radha is dressed as Subal in many altars of our Gaudiya tradition. Nuri has some cake there. You have to send that somehow, some ball, or not only you. Okay. Okay, you can send that somehow. Technology, Zoom is not so developed as to send that via chat now, and I can honor that internally. I'm honoring. But I'd like to share with you the darshan here in our altar in Ananda Ashram, where Sri Gaur Radha Madhava are there, and Sri Radha is, of course, dressed as Subal. So this is once in a year that you can have Radha Pada darshan, or the darshan of Sri Radha's lotus feet, because generally during the rest of the year, that's hidden, if you will. That's covered. That's a very confidential thing. But today is one day of a year which you can have the darshan. So I'm getting closer to the altar here, so you can have the darshan. Let me assure that you will be seeing everything properly. Give me 1 minute. 1 second. So here it is. So Shri Gaur Radha Madhav ki jai. So there you have the darshan of Sriman Mahaprabhu, Sri Madhav, speaking with Sri Gaur Sundar. Then Sri Krishna here. Madhav, very beautifully decorated today. Here, Sumati and Bhakti Rasa have done a very unique painting of his face, darshan. And then we have Sri Radha dressed as Subal. So she can meet Krishna without Jatila noticing that. And by being dressed as Subal, she's given the most holy darshan of her feet here. So here you have Radha Pada darshan once a year, and Sri Radha dresses Sriman Subal. So this last darshan I want to conclude with Sri Gaur Radha Madhav ki jai. Sri GOPASTAMI ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari 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 Bo.